Alrighty, everybody. So we are going to be discussing the Industrial Revolution. And we are going to do this by doing a mind map. And the reason I'm having you do this is because it helps people who are visual learners to really see the key concepts that are going on in a story or in a unit of study. And we are going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution. And there are three big key points in this discussion. Please make sure you fill in the bubbles that I fill in, and you do your best with any of the doodles that I put in. Okay, so just do your best. Remember, I'm not looking for artwork. This is an art class. My drawings are not going to be pretty either, okay? So just work with me. Write down everything that I write down. And I'm going to go as slow as I can, okay? So the Industrial Revolution was between the 1760s all the way through the 1800s. Okay, so it was a span of about 140 years, roughly, this was going on. Okay, now, there were three key things that really encompassed or made up the Industrial Revolution. And the first part was that there was a ton of migration. Now, migration is just a fancy word for travel or moving. And that's why when I think of migration, I'm thinking of a person with a little suitcase like this. Like a suitcase like that. His little wheels. And he's moving. Okay? And people during this time period were going from farms to cities. Okay, they were making their way over to cities. And there were a couple of reasons why this was happening. First off, people were leaving their farms because of the Enclosure Acts. And these Enclosure Acts were taking place in England, or another fancy word for that is Great Britain. Okay, and these Enclosure Acts basically made it so that way people's farms were a lot smaller and it was easier to regulate or to control these lands. So people were having to put up massive fences around their land, and that meant some farmers actually lost land. Sometimes they lost their land completely. And that meant that farmers who spent years farming had to leave in order to go and find a new job. And people were going to find new jobs in the city. Okay? Now, there were also two key resources in England that led to the migration of a lot of people over into the cities. And those two resources are iron and coal. So I know in Minecraft, the coal kind of looks like little black clumps like that. And the thing with coal is that these were used as fuel. And then the iron, we'll do an iron pickaxe because I always did iron pickaxes because I could never find diamonds. Okay. Iron became a major metal that was used in a lot of machinery and a lot of the new inventions that came about during this period. Okay. So you had iron and coal. There was a lot of iron and coal in England, especially in Britain. So that led to a lot of people going over to the cities because iron and coal were being used in the factories over there. And that leads us to our next part, which is that people were going to get jobs in these factories in the city. Okay, they were going to get jobs. And in these factories, the problem was, even though they were getting a job, which was great, the conditions or the situation was not great for them. Like they had very low pay. There was a lot of sickness. Like they had these little diseases going on. Everyone was getting sick. It was a little germ, okay? People were getting injured a lot. So you got the little medical cross here. And then the conditions themselves, everyone was very cramped. It was very humid. It was very loud. It was dark. It was very dusty as well, which kind of also led to some of the sickness going on. Okay? Now, people were also migrating because the population was growing. They were running out of places to live, so they were going to cities. And the reason why the population was increasing, the population, T-I-O-N, the reason the population was increasing was because food production was increasing. Food was being made a lot faster, and there was a lot more food. And if people are eating, then that means they're able to live. And that also means people are able to live longer lifespans. They're able to grow old. So let's draw like this old dude right here. He's going to go here. Okay. All right. So migration. One big key part here, okay? Now, the next big key part, and probably the most important part of the Industrial Revolution, were the innovations or the inventions during this time period. Okay? First one was the spinning jenny, which basically what it did is it made it possible to make a ton of thread all at once. So instead of just one person sitting there making a whole spool of thread or yarn, you could have like 10 at a time being done at the same time. And that led to a major growth of the textile industry, which is basically just a fancy word for clothes. Okay, so you had t-shirts being made like crazy. Well, not t-shirts specifically, but clothes. Okay. The next big one, 2 of them were made by this one individual named Eli Whitney. And the first one he did was called interchangeable parts, which interchangeable parts basically means you could take it apart and put it back together again, kind of like Legos. Okay, so when I think of Eli Whitney, I'm thinking of Legos for some reason. Oops, hold on, there we go. Let's do that, and got the Lego. And this was very key, especially for machines, because machines would break all the time. But the problem is that if a machine broke, then that meant that they had to toss the whole machine. Well, with interchangeable parts, all they had to do was go in, find the broken part, pull it out, and then they could put in a new part that was pretty much good to go. And that also really helped the auto industry. Okay. That helped the auto industry a lot, because that meant that people could make their cars, and if a part broke on the car, they could take it out and put in a new one. Okay. And that also meant that mass production was possible, which basically means that more stuff was able to be made. Okay, so we got a lot more stuff. There we go. More stuff. Okay, the other thing that Eli Whitney made was called the cotton gin. Okay. And the cotton gin made it very easy for cotton to be harvested. And so instead of people having to go in and pick it by hand and like pull out the seeds and pull out all of the other stuff that wasn't needed, the cotton gin would just spin, collect it all and get rid of the seeds and get rid of anything that was not desired. Okay, so you can draw a little bit of cotton if you want. Oh, cotton ball right there. Okay, a little bit of cotton. And unfortunately, the cotton gin, I was saying that people had to go in and pick it by hand. Let's be real, it wasn't just people. Unfortunately, slavery became much bigger during this time. Okay, so cotton gin led to what we're now going to talk about, which is social change. And one of the big things during this time period is that slavery rose up like crazy. And it was because of the cotton gin. So we're going to make that quick connection right there. Okay. The other big thing that was going on was child labor. And kids were going to work. Kids younger than even 12 and 10 were going to work. They were going to work in mines and factories, and they were working for very low pay. Okay, they were working for 40 cents a day. And each day they were working 10 hours, and they were working 6 days a week. So for 10 hours of work, they got paid 40 cents, and they would work usually 6 days. And it was also a very dangerous place for kids to be. Okay, kids were getting hurt a lot. They were getting stuck in mine shaft collapses. They were getting caught in explosions. It was not a safe place for them to be. Okay, so child labor was a big part in this, and thankfully we have rules now that prevent kids younger than 15 and a half to be working. And also, thankfully, slavery is no longer legal. So this time period really did lead to a bunch of changes in society. So even though the cotton gin did lead to a lot of slavery, this time period also made it very clear that slavery was not a good thing. And that's what eventually led to the Civil War in the United States. But you will learn more about that next year. There's 2 more little connections that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. The biggest thing, okay, is that these innovations, we're going to come back to the innovations, led to the factories in the cities growing like crazy. And like I was talking about earlier with iron and coal also led to these massive factories being very popular. So we got to make sure that we connect these 2 guys to factories in the cities as well. All right. Well, this is the Industrial Revolution in its entirety. So make sure that if you need to, you pause this video and you copy down anything that you missed. If you have any questions, you let me know, and I will be speaking to you guys shortly. Have a good day. Bye-bye.